Hey, this is Big Jason. Thank you so much for signing up, and I hope you enjoy this killer message from NoSexGary, a real honest-to-God way to get rich with direct marketing. So this is a virtual tear sheet, like I was saying before in the last video. I found it in Scott's Belonging. It's part of a multi-million-dollar promotion that he wrote for Gary, and I hope you enjoy it. But first, I want to let you know that below this video, there's a link, or actually a form, to sign up for the Shortcut Copywriting Secrets pre-launch contest, where you could win Scott's unreleased hottest sales letters. Some of his best friends don't even have this. As you're looking right now, this is a picture of Scott and fellow Halbert proteges, myself, Sammy Markowitz, right next to Scott. You may know him as Gary Halbert's Seeing Eye Jew. Amit Sunija next to me, and then of course, Bond Halbert. So enjoy the video, comment below. Can you apply anything you learned in this message from NoSexGary to your marketing today? I want to hear about it. Let's discuss it. And again, enter that contest so you can win some unreleased home runs that Scott wrote throughout his career, and possibly win some ad breakdowns by some of the best copywriters living today. David Deutsch, Brian Kurtz, John Carlton, Bon Halbert, other Halbert proteges, and many more. Once again, this is Big Jason. Enjoy, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
What I'm going to do right now is change the course of the seminar a little bit. And I'm going to teach you the real honest-to-God way to get rich if you want to get rich in direct marketing. I wonder, John, if you could help me move this over here. Just slide this thing over here. And maybe hand me that thing that dropped down. All right. Now, I'm going to tell you the first thing that people who want to make money in direct response marketing, or for that matter, almost any kind of marketing, do. And that is, they come up with a product or an idea for a product, and then they go out looking for a market to sell it to. Now, in some cases, that's okay if you're selling something that you're just absolutely rabidly passionate about. But you have to be passionate about to the point that you would sell it even if you never made any money with it. Now, I have actually felt that way about some things and have sold some things just because I liked it and was so passionate about it. But I'm going to guess that most of the people in this room, although you may be passionate about your product, would rather make a lot of money by what you're doing. Could I just curious to see all the hands of the people who would just like to make a hell of a lot of money, you know? Okay. You can sometimes do the same things, but we're going to assume that your objective here is to make a lot of money, and I am going to give you an ABC 1, 2, 3 foolproof formula for doing that. And I'm going to teach you exactly how to do it. The first thing, if you're serious about direct marketing, is you have to buy this book. This is called the Standard Rate and Data Service. Usually it is shortened to SRDS, mailing list book. And there are 2 of them, mailing list books, and they come out, I believe, 4 times a year. They update them. Now, I forget exactly what they cost, but it's like $400 or $500 a year. $680 a year, okay? If you do not have the SRDS list book, you are not a serious person in direct marketing, because this is the cornerstone of everything. Now, let me tell you what these books contain. They contain every single mailing list available in the United States today that you can rent. And when you rent a mailing list, that means you rent it. That means you can only use it once, unless that person buys from you. Then they become your customer. But it has thousands upon thousands upon thousands of different mailing lists. And it will tell you how many names are on the list, how many of those names are men, how many of them are women, what their age group is, what it is that they bought, how much they paid for it, how recently they bought it, who owns the list, everything you can imagine that you need to know about that list. Now, when I talk to you, I want you to know that what I'm telling you applies to all forms of marketing. But I'm going to concentrate on direct mail because it's the best way I can illustrate it. You know, for example, if I were talking about space advertising, I would say the magazine or the newspaper or the publication is the most important. That would be the mailing list, essentially. But I'm always saying the audience is the most important. And the most direct link you can have to your audience, and this is true, I mean, with space, magazines, the internet, anything, this all applies. But this, if you don't have this, don't try and bullshit yourself that you are in direct marketing, because you cannot be a serious player in direct marketing unless you own these two books. The standard rate and data service, and you get two of them, 4 times a year, Chris? 4 times a year, and in the middle you get updates. And so you have the mailing list that are available for everything that is available. And when you read through these, you will stay awake night because you couldn't even believe that these lists were available. So there was a man here yesterday that had a golf product. And if you look under the section of golf here, you will be amazed at how many golfers there are. People who have bought golf magazines, golf books, golf clubs, golf instruction courses, etc., etc. And golfers are a perfect example of the kind of people you want to sell to. And basically, the kind of people you want to sell to are addicts. You know, people who have a real profound passion for something, an irrational passion for something. Now, you can sell a lot of things, and there are many ways to make money, but I'm going to tell you what I consider the one best way. Let's say that you identify a very passionate mailing list, and you want that mailing list to be a recent mailing list, preferably that people have a high average unit of sale, people who bought something of a similar nature frequently. In other words, someone who's bought a golf book and a golf magazine and golf clubs, and he pays a lot of money for it and he does it a lot. That's the guy you want to sell your golf thing to. Now, let me assume, secondly, that you don't have a product to sell. That is the least of your worries. Not having a product to sell should be the least of your worries. The best product to sell, if you don't have one already, is an information product. And here's one that I currently, in conjunction with another person, am selling right now. And you know what the title of this is? It's how to make your personal computer easier to use than your home telephone. And there is a market of millions of people, mostly elderly people, not elderly, they're grandparents, who are sick to death that technology has bypassed them, that their 7-year-old kids can go on a computer and do things that they can't do. So there is a market for this. We happen to be selling this in the newspapers, and it's doing very well. If you look through here, you'll find there's another list, and we'll start mailing. But right now, sometimes I start my campaigns first in the newspaper, this ad is how to buy any prescription drug at up to 84% discount. Massive market for that product, because the people in America, literally, because of the drug companies, are often being forced to choose between dog food and prescription medicine. And that's not right. The only way I can cope with statistics like that, which depress me, is joke about it, and I call them the Alpo set. But my heart goes out to them. So this is a legitimate book on how you can buy your prescription drugs at up to 84% discount, and it is true. And by the way, let me tell you something about that. It's legal, and we put extra stuff in the book, but I'm going to tell you how simple it is. You know that you need a certain drug, like John buys massive amounts of Viagra all the time, okay? Well, I'm sorry, John. We'll edit it out. Anyway, Viagra in the United States costs about $10 a pill. In Canada, it costs about $3. With John, it doesn't matter because he doesn't need that much anyhow. But, I'm just kidding him. But seriously, do you know what the difference is from you getting it for $3 a pill or $10 a pill? Is that you go to your doctor, you get him to write a prescription for Viagra, and you say, by the way, would you have your secretary phone the prescription to this pharmacy? It has an 800 number. And the secretary walks out, phones the prescription to this pharmacy, which will be in another country, preferably Canada, and they'll send it to you, and you'll get it for $3 a pill instead of 10, and it's legal. And it's legal for the top arthritis drugs. It's legal for all the drugs. Now, why doesn't the American public know about this? Because it would not be really profitable for the drug companies to know about that, but that's true. So I also have a book about that. But I'd like to begin, I would like to begin by telling you about the most successful campaign until the next one I'm going to tell you about I ever did. And the most successful campaigns in my life have been my first campaign and what is now going to be my last campaign. My first campaign, many of you will remember, was a company called Halberts Incorporated, and we sold family crest. How many of you got a letter about a family crest in the mail? Well, you know why you got that letter? Because we mailed 600 million of them. And what happened is, this was way back. I don't even want to tell you when it was, because then you'd know how old I was, and if my fiance ever found out, she'd dump me, so forget it. But it was a long time ago. And they didn't have the SRDS book then. But they had, I think they had list cards. They had list data cards. I don't think they had the SRDS book. And they said, people have got to have something in common, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They said, you could never make a mailing work to the telephone book, because that's just everybody's in the telephone book. And I got to thinking, and they said, I'd like to be the first person who ever made a mailing that made a profit to a telephone book. So I said, do these people have anything in common whatsoever? I got to thinking about it. You know what? They did. They all had a name. I thought, they've all got a name. Maybe they had in common, I didn't use this information, but they did have a telephone number too. Not everybody in the world years ago had unlisted telephone numbers, but they all had a name, okay? So then, And I want you to know this is back in the days when computer letters were just in the process of being developed. Almost all, 99.999% of all sales letters mailed back in those days were mailed, they were printed letters, mailed bulk rate, with labels and teaser copy on the outside, and they all said, "Dear friend," or "Dear resident," or "Dear occupant," or something. But since computer letters came out, they'd just come out, and a man I knew back then, a friend of mine named Leo Yoakum, who owned Printronics in New York, had the first upper and lowercase IBM print train. I bet you Chris doesn't even know what the hell that is. But what it meant is that you could now use a computer to write a letter that didn't have all capital letters. In other words, it was a letter that looked like a letter. Now, all the other computer letters look like declarations of war. And in addition to them looking like declarations of war, people used them wrong because they found out that just the fact that you said, "Dear Mr. Johnson," in the letter would, on the average, now think about this, back then, on the average, just that one change alone tripled response. And when you triple response, you do a hell of a lot more than triple profits. Because the big influx of the money that comes in goes to pay for your expenses that are fixed. Your postage, your printing, your mailing list, it's everything. So if you're getting a 3% response on a mailing, you don't have to get a 6 response to double the profit. You probably have to only get a 3.5% response to double the profit. Well, I was reading some opportunity newspaper, and it told about different clever ways that people had come up with to make money. And there was this one grandmother that lived in this county. And she had a hobby, go to the library, and she would research to find out if a person had a family crest. And if they did have a family crest, she would make a black and white pen and ink drawing of it. And then she'd put it on a postcard and have the postcards printed up. And if the name was McGillicuddy, she'd go to the phone book and look up all the McGillicuddys in the phone book, mail this postcard to all the McGillicuddys, and say, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. McGillicuddy, you may be interested to know that your name was recorded with a family crest. And if you like, here's a drawing of it. And now that you know that you have one, if you like, I supplement my income by painting them in full color on mahogany." She made a nice little income doing that. It was a great idea. But I got to thinking about that. Whoa, wait a minute. If you can write a postcard to all the McGillicuddys without having to personally type it, which would cost you $5 or $6 a letter, or without having the computer make it, then you could get all the telephone books in the United States, take all the McGillicuddys out of it. You could type one letter to Mr. and Mrs. McGillicuddy, turn it over to a printer, and you could mail thousands upon thousands of what appeared to be typed or personal computer letters. Well, we actually did that. We went and got telephone books from all of the big cities in the United States. We'd researched the McGillicuddy coat of arms. And then we made a research report. We called it the Family Name Research Report, which gave people like a black and white drawing of their coat of arms and told them the history of their family name, their family motto, what the name meant, and everything. Okay? And people bought them in droves. Now, a little bit later from this, Reuben Donnelly, who at that time, and maybe still does, I don't know yet, had the biggest mailing list in the world. Everybody who had a telephone, everybody who had an automobile, if you had one, you were on their list. And you know what was kind of funny is that, and these days and age, everybody kept their names in alpha order, strict alphabetical order. But the new zip code laws came out, and that meant that if you wanted to save money on postage because you mailed bulk, because you were an idiot, instead of mailing first class, as I taught people to do, you had to mail in zip code sequence. So they put their list in zip code sequence. And the first move we had to make, and one of the lessons you're going to learn from this is marketing success, you should write this down, is most often a process. It's not an event. It's an event in the way that a guy has studied music for 15 years, and all of a sudden he comes out with a hit song and he's an overnight success. It's a process. And this was all part of the process. So what we had to do is pay $70,000, which was a real fortune back then, to have Reuben Donnelly go back over their list and put it back in alphabetical order. Because we wanted the Abbotts, the Bakers, the Caulifelds, and everything. It cost us 70 grand to do that. But after we had it done, then we could type, Dear Mr. and Mrs. Abbott, did you know that your family name was recorded with the coat of arms in ancient heraldic archives more than 700 years ago? And that started the business. Now, at the time, the letter I wrote, I believe, became the most widely mailed letter in history. It might have been second, according to a letter that was written for the Wall Street Journal. I'm not sure, but I'll take second place. But I think it was first. But it still wasn't working. It would work sometimes, and then it wouldn't work, and then it would work half-assed. And Bond's mother, my ex-wife, said, hey, you dummy, it's very simple. The less common the name is, the higher the response is going to be. And we did a graph, and sure as hell, the Jones and the Johnsons didn't buy the coat of arms. But if your name was Blixflix, you'd buy like crazy. So then we were able to figure out how many people there had to be that had a certain name for it to be profitable. Now, how the hell could you find that out? Well, I flew to the Social Security Administration in Boston because they had a report that told you in alphabetical order how many there were of every surname in the United States. They'd tell you how many Abbotts, how many Jones, how many Halberts, how many et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the report was free. Our tax dollars paid for it. And they just gave it to me. They gave me something that was no value to anybody else on earth except me and the people I was working with. And do you know why they created that report? Because even back then, the people who screwed around with computers didn't have anything to do with their time. And one day, just for the hell of it, they said, let's see how many names there are everybody has. So they just gave it to me. Then we went back and we were able to find out that if you had too many names, like Joneses and Johnsons and stuff like that, when we sent our mailings out, we couldn't make a profit. And we also found out if there were too few names, we couldn't make a profit, because if there were only 5 or 6 people that had that name, it wasn't worthwhile to go through all the trouble to make the product and print it up. But somewhere in here, we found, and I know the exact range now, where it became profitable and where it stopped being profitable. And that was tens of millions of names. And eventually, we ended up selling, I don't know. I left the company early, after about 2.5 years, and we'd already sold 21,900,000 people. Back at those, in fact, at that time, I really thought I was a hot shot. I used to fly over America when I was in a plane, and I'd look down, and I'd try and figure out how many people, how many of those houses has my efforts caused to write a check, either for me or somebody I was working for. And more than 20 years ago, it was already 1 out of 3. And now I fly over it, and I can't even imagine flying over a house that hasn't sent a check to me or given me a credit card or somebody I work for. So anyway, what happened is that company grew to where we operated out of 8 countries, and we had 700 employees. And that was all based on a simple idea from an old lady. And you know what the difference between that old lady and me was? And you've got to make it the difference between you and that old lady. Is she had sight, but I had vision. Huge difference. So anyway, time passed. I sold out my interest in the business for a fortune, which I've since dissipated. I wasted none of it. I spent it all on drugs, booze, and women. And I went on to other endeavors. But that is a way that you can make a lot of money. Now, what's interesting about this is, let's say that you find a mailing list that you think is great. You know, and there are 1 million names on this list. And say it costs an average of 60 cents a piece to mail a letter to these names. Does that mean it costs you $600,000 to mail this list? Of course not. You mail 1,000 of these names and see if you get a good response, and then you mail more, and you use that money to snowball it more. So in effect, you can mail a humongous amount of names with a very small amount of seed money. And that is the best way to get started and make money in direct mail. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Okay, good. Now, since that was my first successful direct mail promotion, since then, I've done so many successful direct mail promotions, I've lost count of them all. So many infomercials, I've lost count of them all. So many space ads, I've lost count of them all, et cetera, et cetera. And so, I haven't told anybody this, but I'm going to tell you now. One of the things that I wanted to do for a long time is retire. But before I retired, I wanted to write one more promotion that was better than that first one. And I finally did it. And now that I've done it, I'm not going completely away. I'm going to keep writing my newsletter. I'm not going to charge people for it anymore. I'm going to keep putting it on the internet. But one of the things I'm going to do, now that I've developed this promotion and everything, you know, I've proved my point, and I've decided I'm here today to announce my retirement. But before I completely retire, I want to tell you about the promotion that's better than that coat of arms promotion. And I want to tell you about the genesis of it, because I think it's very important that you know that how things develop, along as just the answer to a question. A few years ago, a scammy outfit called Seychelles in Irvine, California, hired me to help them promote an IPO, initial public offering. And they paid me an awful lot of money to do it. And I went out there and learned that they were all scammers. And I told them I wouldn't participate anymore in this. In fact, I was going to blow the whistle on it. And they offered me $1 million not to do it. And I told them where they could shove the $1 million. But I learned a lot about the stock market during that time. I learned what made the stocks go up. I learned what made stocks go down. And the really simple answer to that question is news. Now, don't worry, I'm not all going to try and make you stock market buyers or anything, but I want to explain this to you. And the reason I learned this is I wrote an ad for them to raise money for their IPO, appeared twice as a full page in Investor's Business Daily. And I said to them, if this stock were already on the market, would I have been able to write this ad, get it published? And they said, yeah. I thought, holy shit. If I can write an ad like this about about a stock that's out, I could make a ton of money. So the story of how I left them is immaterial, but I did. And I came back to California, and I signed up to be a member of something called PR Newswire, which is something that distributes electronically news stories. And I would research stocks till I found what I thought was a really great story. One of the ones I'm most proud of is Endocare. They developed a way to cure prostate cancer without surgery called targeted cryoablation. And they have a 100% cure rate. And they couldn't get arrested, they couldn't get noticed, they couldn't get anything. And the president talked to me, and he was almost crying, and I said, you don't have to cry anymore. I said, you're in my hands now. I'm going to put you on the map. I wrote my own news story about Endocare, and the price shot up like a graph. Bob Dole became their spokesman. They were selling for $1.50 when I wrote them up, and they're in the $30 to $40 range now. That was because of a news story. And then I started writing other news stories. I'd find, and this is legal, by the way, that sort of ruins it for me, but it takes the fun out of it. But what I would do is I'd research and I'd find a stock that was, all of its light was hidden under a barrel. And the thing about the stock market, they hire people to help them promote their stocks, and they hire morons. You know, these guys don't know how to write a good story. They don't know how to write an understandable story. And you know, hell, I'm one of the best writers in the world. You give me a stock with a story, I'll guarantee you people will notice it and understand it. So I'd go buy a bunch of stock, write my newsletter. The stock would go up like crazy. I'd sell it. And I thought, damn, this is a pretty good way to make a living, you know? And then some guy screwed it all up. He worked for a gun manufacturer, and he was connected to Safety Lock. And he wrote a fraudulent news story about how Safety Lock had gotten a big contract from Smith & Wesson or somebody. And it just wasn't true. The news story was not true. And he got in the kinds of trouble you get when you do things like that. The company's stock plummeted because they, victimized people. It was a lie. He was telling people that stuff that wasn't a lie and everything. And the news wires no longer would let independent guys like me analyze the news and to being written by people who were working for the company who basically didn't know how to write news releases. But I was still interested in this, and I thought, even if I can't do it this way anymore, maybe I could just find other news stories. And when I found a good news story, I could jump on that. So I started reading the news stories, and whenever I found one was hot, I'd make an instant buy of that stock, and almost always went up. And I learned something very important about stocks and news. And this talk isn't about stocks and news. As I say, we talk about cosmetics, we call it the mud. Stocks and the news, what we're talking about here is the mud. And that is, unexpected good news will almost always make a stock go up, but you can't rely on it to make it stay up. I learned that real fast. So I'd get the hot news, I'd buy the stock, I'd watch it like a hawk. When it started to slow down, I'd sell it. And I started trading stocks, and I traded and traded and traded and almost never lost. By the way, I like to just solve problems. And in 1975, somebody said that you could never beat the options market. I went into Conti Commodities on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles and said, teach me how to buy and sell stocks. And they wanted to teach me theory about buying and selling commodities and futures. And I said, I don't want to know none of your theory. I just want to know the mechanics, how I phone in an order, how I don't. They said, well, you're making a mistake. I said, I'll make the mistake. And I went and I hold the world's record for consecutive commodity trades. I made 76 winning commodity trades right in a row. This is in the middle 70s, just to prove I could do it. Then I wrote a book about it called Foolproof Futures. Conti Commodities got their lawyer to try to stop me. And I said, well, what's your basis? I shouldn't be allowed to publish this book. And he said, well, your trading ideas are absurd. I said, hey, I just made 76 consecutive winning trades in a row. There must be a little something to my ideas, isn't there? He couldn't think of anything to say. So I continued to publish the book and drove Conti Commodities bankrupt. I lose interest in problems after I've solved them. But anyway, this was a great way to trade stocks. And then I went out to visit my son Bond, and he was working at Giorgio Armani as an executive. And he didn't like it very much. And I said, Bond, you ought to trade stocks the way I do it. He said, well, it's crazy. You don't leave a job, and go trade stocks with your dad. But after he watched me trade for, 3 months in a row without a loss, he quit Giorgio Armani and started trading stocks. And then he learned the same thing I did. This all sounds wonderful, but we don't like to trade stocks because you have to sit there and look at this computer screen all day. It's working for a living. So we thought, why don't we teach other people this trading method? It's worth a lot of money. And some people like to trade stocks. There's a lot of people that get addicted to insane things. Chris here works on his computer. He's got the most beautiful wife you've ever seen, works on his computer 14 hours a day. You know why? Because he's insane. Don't bother trying to figure it out. So we started teaching other people. We ran a little ad. We'd run a little ad in Investors Business Daily. It cost us $700. People would answer that ad, and we'd talk to them. And for every ad we ran, it cost us $700. We took in $60,000. So we did that, but ads were out. And then we started looking for a way to do this by direct mail. And we were approached by a man named Gerald McCarthy. Is Gerald here? Anyway, he was here yesterday. Probably here today, sleeping off a hangover or something. He had a list. We mailed our stock trading, a description of that system to the list. I want to tell you the numbers first. Bond, how much money have we taken in from that list so far? $3.5 to $4 million from Gerald McCarthy's list. Ask me how many names are on his list. Somebody asked me. 13,000. That's all there were. Now, we won't get those kind of results from outside lists. Nothing even beginning there. We're talking about pulling in like $400 for every name we mailed to. But that was a proprietary list. That's like me mailing my newsletter list or somebody else that you've been corresponding to you that trusts you. So we decided that what we ought to do is we ought to explore the possibility of mailing this to outside lists. And I need Chris to come up here. Can you find the Phillips master file? Listen, this is too difficult for him. He's slow. Let me just tell you about, there's a lot of people interested in investments in this country, and a lot of those subscribe to Phillips publication. They were one of my biggest clients. They were one of John's biggest clients. They sell all kinds of newsletters, options newsletters, stock newsletters, retirement newsletters, yada, 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 yada. How many names are on their master file? 1.5 million names on their master file. Okay, so is Hawaiian shirt Haynes here? Are you here, Haynes? He's sleeping off a hangover too. Well, Scott Haynes, who I trained, is one of the best copywriters in the world. We had him write a letter. And I actually wrote the first part of the letter. He wrote the second part of the letter. And we mailed this to people with a tape. And we mailed it to the Phillips master file. Now, what the Phillips master file is every name they've got that is some way interested in investing. Okay? And the mailing, if you break it down per thousand, it's rather expensive mailing, costs approximately $2 a piece to mail 1,000 of those master file names. So that's $2,000. And that $2,000, if we spend $2,000 to mail 1,000 of those names, brings back $16,000. Now that's not the kind of response you can get from an endorsed list like Gerald's, where there's a relationship, but that's not bad. But the Phillips master file is broken up into sub-files, like people who are only interested in options, people who are only interested in day trading, people who are only interested in this kind of trading, that kind of trading. And so we took what we could get. I guess we could spend $2,000 and get $16,000 back from mailing everybody. But if we narrowed it, we wondered what we could do if we narrowed it. And we mailed 13 different lists. They were subcategories of the Phillips file that we thought would be the hotter parts of the Phillips file. And we don't have all the results in, but you know, the results are coming in. And what's options doing? It's 12. It's, yeah. The way we express when we want to know, the way you talk about advertising, if you spend $1,000 to run a newspaper ad and it takes in $2,000 gross, you call that 2 to 1. Takes in $3,000, it's 3 to 1. If it takes in 500, it's 0.5 to 1. That's how you tell. We got one list on there that's already paying off 12 to 1. That means every dollar we spend, we get $12 back. And yes, we do not now, but we haven't needed to yet. And how many of you would like to have a copy of the letter that fetches this kind of money? Is there anybody that wants this? Why don't we give them a copy of the letter? And I don't want you to read it now, but I want you to look at it so that you'll know because this is the best promotion I've ever done, and I want it to be my swan song. I'm sick of it. But there may be something of interest to some of you in here between the time I'm finished. Phillips Publishing is the largest publisher of financial information in the United States. They do very expensive newsletters. John and I both worked for them. They hire the most expensive copywriters in the world. We won't work for them again because, you know, it takes like 3 months to do a promotion for them. You know, you got to trade in your life for it. Now, if you guys can still listen to me while I'm looking, I'll tell you an interesting thing. And these are some things that you might want to know about the mail. In days of old, when there wasn't any credit cards and people couldn't telephone in their order, say you mailed 10,000 letters and checks came back to you in the mail. Now the day you put your mail into the post office, you got to count as day one. And I always say, if you ever want to follow my emulation, it's alive. The day I put it in the mail, I say it's alive. And then you go day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, it's 6, etc. And generally, it's not a science, but generally in those days, on the 12th day of the mailing, that was double day. That is the day that you generally had half of all the money that you're going to get. It's not a science, but that was rough. Now, since the advent of telephone, you can order by phone and order by credit card, double day generally is not 12 days out. It was 12 days in the good old days, but it's a little faster now, usually. But the mailing that we put together is a little slower. You may as well come up now, Chris, and get to your section. Brings this computer. This guy, you know, he carries his computer when he makes love to his wife. I don't know. No, he doesn't. He's got a great way. Okay. The mailing that we mail now, if you all have it in front of you, raise your hands if you all have it in front of you. Show me your letter. Raise up your letter and show me the tape that you have with it. Now, what these people have to do before they respond to this mailing, how many pages is that letter?
It's 8, I think.
8 pages? Just look at the last page and you can tell. Has a number on 7, whatever. They have to read that whole letter, and then they have to listen to that entire tape before they can do business with us. So that means that they have to do these 2 things, and usually they will listen to the tape. They don't plug it in, they don't just rush it. They've got their lives to lead, and they often listen to it when they're reading or writing, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, as near as we can tell, it is approximately 40 days we're going to get till double day. Again, that's not a science, but you can see why that is. They have to read a long letter. They have to listen to an hour's tape. Okay? Now, when I started this little speech, I said the most important thing is that you find a rabid, hungry, insane group of people who want it. You're looking for addicts. Well, We got the SRDS, and we took our resident anal compulsive and told him to check out the SRDS and to find out all the lists that were available to us. Now I'm going to just answer the questions I ask you. No extraneous conversation. How many mailing lists did you find?
There's 269 lists.
269 lists that are people that are interested in investing. Now, before I ask you the last question, I want you to read one of the parts of the list book, and you can read it for yourself, is a description of the people on a mailing list. You know, like you would say, people who are at least 40 pounds overweight that have bought 3 different diet books trying to lose it, you know, blah, blah, blah. Would you read some descriptions of the mailing list for me?
Highest grade multi-investors, diversified investors who have a minimum of 5 types of investments ranging from conservative to speculative financial products. The universe is 6,693,542 names. High-grade multi-investors, investors
You
who
don't have to read the numbers, just read the descriptions.
Okay. Investors with a minimum of $250,000 net worth and an income of $75,000 plus. Diversified investors who have at least 3 types of conservative and or speculative investments. Medical or drug stocks, medical specialists, buyers and inquirers of biotech, formerly medical or drug stocks, high income and net worth, medical specialists who have invested in or inquire to invest in medical, biotech, or drug stocks within the last 12 months for a minimum of $10,000. Individuals who are utilizing the internet to make stock picks and keep up to date on the financial world. Nationwide financial newsletter subscribers, buyers, investors in various stock markets and other investment markets who subscribe to one or more
Does
financial...
any of these people sound like good prospects to you? Keep going.
Options for your success. Investors who are able to risk $5,000 or more per investment.
Keep going.
Combined Investors Master File. Active investors who have either invested or inquired to invest in at least one conservative and or speculative investment within the last 12 months for a minimum of $10,000. Communication stock buyers and prospects. Investors of communication stocks and related wireless, cable, cellular, mobile radio, pager, and satellite and similar industries.
How do these descriptions sound to you? Hungry. Read some more.
Computer technology stock buyers, prospects, and inquirers. Active investors of computer hardware and software stock offerings.
Read another one.
Discount stock service buyers, inquirers, and prospects. Investors and inquirers of NASDAQ over-the-counter, IPOs, bulletin boards, and pink sheets.
Okay?
I think we're back to the start here.
Okay, now, I'm going to ask him to stop reading these. Now, but I'm going to ask you again, how many lists are there?
There's 269.
269? Okay. How many names are on these 269 lists?
163,426,121 names.
Okay, that'll do for now. Good job. Just give him a hand. He's a very nervous guy. Now, here's what happened to Halbert's. We started in about 1968. We kept running it till it got bigger and bigger. I bailed out when we had several hundred employees. I sold it for a fortune, my half. Dennis kept it running. I kept consulting with him. And a few years ago, Dennis Hasslinger died, and he left the company in trust to his brain-dead family. His brain-dead family hired a huge corporation to run the company, and 2 years later, it was bankrupt. You know, but you know how long it took? You know how long we made money off that company? 30 years. Because you know what? When we got done, we'd mail the Adams and then mail all the rest of the names. Guess what? It was time to start mailing the Adams again. You know? We just mailed and mailed and mailed and mailed. The same thing would appear to be true with this stock system. And by the way, the stock system is legitimate. It's the only one in the world that works. We've got a guy that made $3 million with it. We've got testimonials up the yazoo. I personally find trading stocks boring as pig shit, but a lot of people like it. Okay. Now, it took 30 years to suck all the fungolas out of that promotion. And we have been making plenty of money by doing this our way. But this is probably going to be impossible for most of you to comprehend. But I have learned that I would rather spend time with my Costa Rican fiancée than screw around with marketing. I just thought I would. And I don't know for sure that I have another 30 years to do this. So what I did, because I don't need the money, and it's not because I'm Donald Trump rich, it's just because I don't have to worry about the rent. I sold the company for $1. And I sold it to a company called New Millennium Incorporated that is ran and managed by this guy, Chris, up here. Where is Chris? Oh, okay. Well, the guy that just read the things here. He doesn't own it either, but the company is very reputable, and he is very reputable. He's honest to the point of like to slap him around because he gets 16 decimals to the point. And I made a couple of stipulations with it, and is that he would have to keep my son Bond on, because I honestly think my son Bond Halbert now knows more about the stock market than anybody in the United States. And one of the services we provide is that if an investor has any kind of problems whatsoever, he has complete access to my son Bond, who will answer his questions about the market, about the system, about any individual stocks. In other words, he holds their hand, because we want to make everybody who buys our system a winner. Do we make 100% of the people who buy the system a winner? No. There's a certain percentage of these people that have half a brain that should be flipping burgers at McDonald's. But I'll tell you this, everybody that it's possible to make a winner. The course that we send them, what we sell them, and Bond's training makes them that winner. And I also specified as part of this contract that they would have to keep Carlos Duran on as the guy who is the head of sales. Because, and these aren't capricious things, you know, I have sons that I wouldn't ask anybody to hire. I mean, they're really candidates for the Jerry Springer show. I got 2 sons. Well, Kevin, and so I put together a team and decided to get out of it, except for one thing. I'm not going to completely get out of it, because I'm not going to leave them hanging. I want to be like a godfather, you know, where if they run into some problems, they come and say, you know, Dad, what do you think about this? And I said, well, I don't know. Never tell that family what you think. You know, I can't do that very well. You know, you're going to make him an offer he can't refuse. Anyway, so I'm getting out of it, except as a consultant. Now, this company has a lot of money. Not a lot, but it's got thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars. And they could just mail this, take the money in and mail more, and take the money in and mail more. And you know what I said to them? Why don't you do it another way? Because that's the way me and Dennis Hasslinger did it. And it took 30 years. And I said, why don't you find people who are interested in investing in this, not in the whole scheme, but in an individual list. Let's say that you're interested in change wave investing. Why don't you have that guy put up the money and then split the profits with him? That means if you want an idea, a way to make money that's as easy as pig shit. All you have to do is put up the money for mailing, and when it's over, split the profits with them. Now, I'd like to talk to you about this, though. There's how many lists on there? 269. 269 lists. Now, I'd like to tell you how the flow of the money would go if you decide to do this. Let's say that we have a list here that isn't. Here's the way the money flows. The first money always goes to fill the orders. Okay? Let's say that you've chosen change wave investing as something you think would be good to invest in. The money, the mailing goes out, the money comes back. The first part of the money comes back, goes to fill the orders. Got that? The second part of the money, all of it, every dime, goes to you. And the rest of the money that comes in gets split between you and New Millennium. Now, let's talk about risk. If we select these lists properly, they're almost always going to make money. Do you know how many orders we have to get for 1,000 letters mailed from this targeted, select, hungry group of addicts per 1,000? 1,000 letters? We're in profit if we get 2 orders. It was a hell of a lot better than the coat of arms, where the average order was $3. Okay? But is it possible that you could put up the mailing for one of these lists and not get any orders and lose your money? Let me hear your answer that. You bet your ass it is. That is possible. We live in a world today where anything is possible. I just love it when somebody says to me, what could go wrong? And I'd say, like, well, a jet plane could fly into our building and kill everybody that works for us. He'd say, oh, no, I mean seriously, what could go wrong? I said, oh, no, I mean seriously, that's what could go wrong. There is no such thing as a risk-free world. If you would like to live in a risk-free world, you are on the wrong planet. But here is a more likely scenario. Well, the most likely scenario is you make a lot of money. But let's say that you paid to mail 10,000 letters, for example, and that cost about $20,000. Let's say you're a real high roller here. That is not like going to Vegas and taking $20,000 and putting it on black or red and losing it all. For that to be true, you'd have to never get a single order. That's most likely not going to be true. Maybe you'll only take $15,000 back, and to fill those orders, it's going to cost, say, $1,500. So you're going to take in $14,500 that all goes to you, which means that you will not have lost it all, but you will have lost some. Because there ain't no profit without risk. Now, I'm going to do a little bit of a sales job, but I'm not going to do much of a sales job on this because I don't want anybody involved in this that I have to do a sales job on. Because I guarantee you, I can write my newsletter list, and I've never told this to people before, but everybody's always asked me, how many people read your newsletter? Anybody here like to know? 374,000 people. in 50 countries. And that is without one bit of advertising. 374,000 people. So I don't want people I have to sell on this. I don't want people to say, well, is there any chance I could lose my money? The answer is, of course there's a chance you could lose your money, you idiot. Is there any chance I could get hurt driving to work today? Well, yes, there probably is. Is there any chance I'm going to have cancer? Well, yes, there is. But this has the highest positive probability of making everybody involved in it a ton of money of anything I've ever been involved in. I started with the coat of arms, which made millions. I'm stopping with the stock system, which is on its way to making millions, and I'm retiring on the highest note possible. Now, you might want to know some details about all this stuff, and you know what? You're not going to get it from me, because that is lesser mortal shit. Remember that. LMS. You should never do lesser mortal shit. That's why you have guys like Chris Rabelais. You know, he loves to do spreadsheets and all that stuff. And if you are interested in this, he will just, let me say, is there one person that's interested in this? I just want to see a finger. Okay, we'll stop with you. Chris, let's bring the book over to him. Book. See, book? Come book. Well, is the stuff on your computer? Okay, well, the stuff on the book is on his computer. You know the reason he took it from the book to the computer? Because he's an addict. He has nothing else to do. Okay, bring it over here. And open your computer and go over there and kneel beside him. And I want you to look at these. Set it down there. And open it up. Oh, he's very neat. He doesn't like, you know. This guy is so neat, you won't believe it. No, we don't have all the descriptions, but he's got some there. And let him read the descriptions and pick one you would like. You didn't know, had any idea I was this smart, did you? Huh? Huh? Yes. And let me tell you something else. How many of those are direct mail sold totally? There's over 1 million that are almost 100% direct mail sold, which is always a big plus. Yeah, a lot of people do. A lot of names come from Agora. A lot of them come from Phillips. You know. Yeah. Huh? Have you? You have to concentrate on picking a list. I'll try and answer other questions. Yes. The refund percentage is about, it depends on the list that you're working. But when I tell you that we are currently getting back $16 for every dollar we spent, that's after refunds. The refund percentage is going to vary from list to list. Some lists we just don't even get refunds, you know. But that's not usually the case. Some we do. You can't take all day at this. You're going to have to make a decision here. Pick a list. Any other questions? The orders get filled first. And the orders are really cheap to fill. I mean, they're like $50 or something like that. But we have to fill the orders. Then all the rest of the money that comes in goes to the guy who put up the money until that's paid for. Now, there's something very important I got to tell you about this. This is not a group investing, like everybody put their money in the pool. That would be a violation of the SEC rules. You can't do that. Every one of these would be a co-venture. Do you understand? So therefore, you could have a guy do really well on like change wave investing and have a guy not do as well on a different list. You can't, if it's more than 20 people, you've got to register with the SEC, and then you're in the middle of a nightmare. That's why movies, for example, never have more than 20 investors in them. Any other? Yes. Well, what I really want is, I'm not particularly interested in having money change hands today. We are not hurting for money. I want everybody who is interested, I want them to talk to Chris. I want them to talk to my son Bond. You can ask me questions. You can ask Carlos questions. Sleep on it. Take your time. I don't want anybody to get into this and have buyer's remorse because they did it. Because we don't need that kind of money. That's bad karma money. Raise your hands. Anybody thinks they might be interested in this? Could I just see your hands? I'll tell you what you could do. Would you at least write your name on a piece of paper for me and your contact number, and I'll have these people contact you. A business card, whatever. It would be stupid to get your own fulfillment house. Huh? No. Smart ass. No, if you got a fulfillment house that can do that, I mean, we're not married to our fulfillment house. No, well, and truly ours can't. They can handle a lot, but okay. Would you just let me have I'll take them from this. If you're interested, give me your name and your telephone number.
Gary?
And this is not a commitment for you to do anything. This just says I'm interested to talk to you people about it. $1,000. It actually sells for $2,000, and we don't count on collecting the second 1,000 all the time. We don't even give it to them unless we get the first 1,000. And they're now we can't tell you how many people make the second 1,000 because it's too new, but they're starting to make the second payments.
Gary, if you have other people you'd like to tell about this, is there other information besides the sales letter? I'm right here.
But anybody else from here? You're obviously going to give me your name and telephone number. Your name and telephone number. Okay. Actually, what I'm going to have is some helpers collect the names and telephone numbers. Roxanne, where's Bond? Okay. Haven't you found one that looks good to you yet? Well, we haven't mailed all of those yet. Okay, Carlos, would you just collect the names and numbers? And by the way, we have this totally set up with merchant accounts, shipping, handling, everything. And the books are 100% open for anybody to look at. Huh? The headquarters right now is in Phoenix, but I think it's going to end up being in San Diego because Chris, who runs the company, like me, or about to be like me, has a Costa Rican wife who doesn't like 120-degree temperatures. She likes to be around the ocean, so I think he's going to move to be in San Diego. Okay. Any other questions? Yes. Well, I've been thinking about that, and we're not going to test a list. They say that you should always test 10,000 names. I don't believe that. I think you could get a good answer from 1,000 names. So it's about $2,000 a letter. And then we go from there. So that's the bottom. And there is no top. Yes. Who picks the list? You don't think for a moment that I'm going to let some grizzled old guy like you who doesn't know shit about the stock market pick the list, do you? Huh? Sam and I are old friends, and he used to be in the stock market. And basically what I want to do is spend $1,000 to test every list and run out the ones that make a profit, you know. Every one that makes sense. Do we have everybody's cards, that name and telephone number? Got some more coming here? Would you guys give me all the ones that you've got? Come on, pick a list for Christ's sake. Okay, I mean, we're going to talk about the list he has picked. Would you go up to the podium and read the description of that list? Just walk over to the podium like this. Well, find it in the thing, just like you were a real person. He is great to abuse, man. He is... Do we have more questions? Is anybody not giving me their paper with their telephone number? You know what? Because I'm old, I'm sick of doing this shit. I have a beautiful Costa Rican fiance, and it's going to take 10 times as long to do this. Does that make it pretty simple for you? I don't want to do this stuff anymore. Same reason I don't write for Phillips. And they'll pay me anything to do it. I'm old, and I'm tired, and I'm in love. And I'll tell you, if you guys get to a point of sanity, if you ever get a fiancé that looks like mine, you'll be wanting to spend time with her more than you'll be wanting to do this nonsense. Yes? Keep what? I think forever. Yeah, I did not fall in love with that woman because of her looks, which I think are considerable. I fell in love with her because of her heart. I think she's the most honest woman I've ever met, and has the most integrity, has the most responsibility. I think she's just a gift from God. And a lot of people like Chet, come out with all kinds of ways of, getting a great woman and all that stuff. And somebody was asking, they were going to interview me on, how to really get a great woman.
I guess that's what it was.
And you know how I did this? Blind luck. That's my secret for meeting this woman. I swear to God, it was my secret. Blind luck. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to do everything I can not to jeopardize this, because as far as relationships go, I have a great talent for snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. And I'm going to try not to do it with this one, because I don't think God has another one like this for me. Now, you have all those pieces of paper, Roxanne? The people's names and telephone numbers on it? Now, what's the first thing you should not do with those papers? Huh? No, second thing. Give them to me. Because what will happen if you give them to me? Huh? I'll lose them. Now, if he's going to read the description of the list he picked.
Okay, the list that I picked was Invest with the Masters. The summary description was investment subscribers that seek stock and mutual fund recommendations from the leading money managers, and industry insiders, formerly entitled Insightful Investor. Average unit of sale 149. List source 99% direct mail sold.
Okay, that's very good. Now, I want you guys to ask yourself a question. Did anybody not hear the description of that list? And by the way, when you say who picks the list, we're going to let you pick them yourself. You got to do it promptly. You pick the list you think is good instead of us, as long as you do it promptly. Let's suppose that this guy decided to invest $10,000 in doing this. And that means he's put up $10,000 to mail. That will get him, and the price is going down, by the way, as Kyle Hunter takes care of the main. Kyle, are you here? Kyle, stand up for a moment. In the mail house business, I had a diet ad one time called Berry Trim. Do you know, I have a slogan, and whenever I get down on money, is that porkers must pay. And every time that the wolf gets close to the door, I write another ad. On this one, Berry Trim, Kyle was mailing for us 125,000 personalized letters a day. A day. We made so much money on that, it was ridiculous. Okay, this guy's paying $10,000 to mail 5,000 letters. Now, it's cost about $2 a letter. What do you think it'll get down to, Kyle?
You know, it could go down to probably $1.60, $1.50. Depends on the new postage increase.
Say it goes down to $1.60, $1.50, but don't count on that. Let's just count on $2. He's got 5,000. He spent $10,000. He has to get 10 orders for him to recoup his investment. How many people think he won't get any orders from those 5,000 pieces of mail? Can I see the hands that think he might? Huh? That's true. With your background, Warren, I would say that's a distinct possibility. The point I'm trying to make is that those who lose on picking lists, and some people are going to lose some money picking the list, you know, it's going to be a deadbeat list, probably aren't going to lose all of it. You know what I'm saying? It's not like betting red or black. It's going to have to be a pretty crummy list that doesn't get anything back. What? Yeah, and by the way, Doubleday is about the 40th day from the day of the mailing, and currently we are often in profit in less than a week from the day we drop it in the mail. And you know, basically, I want to tell you just a little thing, a little philosophical thing, and then I'll get out of this. Then we'll come back and answering questions. You know, you don't have to stand up there anymore. Okay. It's just, I have a theory about something, and this has to do with what I'm talking about here. I don't really care if any of you invest in this scheme or not. I mean, I would be disappointed if nobody did, but that certainly will happen from when I write 374,000 people and tell them about it. I just wanted this to be kind of be my swan song. You'll see me at another seminar once in a while or something. But I'll tell you what everybody's overlooking now, and it should be foremost in your mind. Something you really got to understand. Time is the irretrievable element. None of us know when we're going to have a Christopher Reeves moment. We could be on top of the world today, and we could be a paraplegic tomorrow. None of us know when we're going to be shot down by some crazed person. None of us know what's going on in the world today. We probably don't even know what country we're fighting today. The world has always been berserk, but now we have the technology to be mega berserk. And we don't have, the one thing we don't have, and you know how all of us live our lives, and I've been doing it, and everybody in this room, like we're not going to die. And that ain't so. We're all going, if history, now I'm trying to live forever, but if history is any guide, I'm going to fail at that goal. And all of you are going to fail. And bad things are going to happen. And when you have a chance for something good to happen, whether it's this or something else, you don't have the luxury, unless you're a complete moron, of waiting. You know, you all saw Syrian this morning, right? And I saw her, and how long do you think it took me to make up my mind? You know, barring finding out that she's a drug addict or something like that. How long do you think it took up my mind to decide this is a woman I wanted to marry? It was a little less. It was a little less. In fact, this woman doesn't even, men are an irritation to her because she's not only beautiful, in Costa Rica she's a rarity because she's tall with blonde hair and green eyes. And I think, you know, I think I had an odd thing working for me in the beginning. Carlos was there at the beginning. You know what it was? I was not paying much attention to her, and I was not talking to her. And I think she thought, this guy must be different. And what it was is I was dumbfounded. I was speechless. I couldn't think of anything to say. But we met, and we've never been apart since. And I want to spend the rest of my life with her. And when you find somebody you want to spend the rest of your life with, your priorities change a little bit. And my priorities do not include running a business the size of this one. So we're going to take a break for lunch, and then we're going to come back, and I want you all people to just write the dumbest questions you can think of, and with John's help, I'm going to try and answer those. Can we finish? Now let's give me a big hand for an intelligent presentation and go. We're done. And we're going to take 90 minutes for lunch. And listen, don't grab me or John in the hall and say, Gary, I know you're busy. I just want to ask you one more question. Question time is in this room. We're gone. Is there anything anybody would like to bring up before we begin? Any questions or any comments or anything? That's kind of depressing. Nobody has any ideas?
Gary?
Yo?
Hello.
Yes.
I was out of the room before. You said you guys are going to pick the list. Is that cast in stone?
I beg your pardon?
You said that. Who's going to be picking the list? Do we get to pick our own mailing lists?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Pick your own mailing list. Okay, nobody has any more questions? Nobody wants to know anything else?
Yeah, hold on. Hey, Gary, what does it cost to fulfill this product?
Beg your pardon?
What is the fulfillment cost?
What's the fulfillment cost? $50 or something like that.
Okay.
Thank you.
further on down the line, would that be reinvestable for future mailings?
I beg your pardon?
With, say, initially a $10,000 investment for a mailing, 2 months from now or whatever, could you still get in on a future mailing?
It depends whether we like you or not.
Okay, how about $2,000?
Actually, although that started like a smart-ass answer, it's really a true answer. Everybody involved in this has all made a consensual agreement that we really want to do business with quite a number of people, but we're not going to do any business with anybody that's a pain in the ass. And here's what I mean by that. You know, you've all gotten in business deals, some of them that you celebrated, you're happy that you got into, and you've all gotten in business deals that you kind of wish you hadn't gotten into. I got into one business deal where I did pretty good for it. I made $1,300,000 for 3 days' work. But in addition to the 3 days' work, I had to take telephone calls from the guy I made the deal with 2 or 3 times a week. And I would not do another business deal with him. Hi, Gary, this is Mark Kaplan. I just wanted to tell you about that mailing. My wife, Marcy, was reading the ad again, and she looked at the 3rd paragraph, and I just think, I don't ever need money this bad, you know. So, so really, yeah, we'd like to see everybody coming up a winner from this. And we'd like to have everybody come up a serious winner. And we're going to strive to do that. But there are some people that I've just learned, no matter how much money is involved, we're not going to do business with those people because we don't need it. And it's not only that, nobody needs it, really. It's bad karma money, it's pain in the ass money. But we're going to try and do as well for everybody as they can. And no, we're not going to take somebody's money and test it and find that it makes a profit and cut them out and keep all the rest of it for ourselves. We don't plan to do that. Does anybody else have any questions? Yes.
You decide to invest $10,000 tomorrow. Would you then spend 1,000 of it to test one list and wait to spend the other 9 on a rollout if it worked? Would you do 10 tests?
No. Well, first of all, it costs $2,000 to test one list because we mail a minimum of 1,000 pieces and it costs approximately $2 a letter. So what we would do is test 5 lists with the $10,000, 5 different lists.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Now, does anybody else have any marketing problems that they would like us to address?
That's the end of this tape. Thank you.
What I'm going to do right now is change the course of the seminar a little bit. And I'm going to teach you the real honest-to-God way to get rich if you want to get rich in direct marketing. I wonder, John, if you could help me move this over here. Just slide this thing over here. And maybe hand me that thing that dropped down. All right. Now, I'm going to tell you the first thing that people who want to make money in direct response marketing, or for that matter, almost any kind of marketing do. And that is, they come up with a product or an idea.
Hey, Big Jason, hope you enjoyed that. Again, use the form below if you haven't signed up already. Enter the contest, win some swipes. You could win the grand prize, which is all his swipes, plus the ad breakdowns by people like Brian Kurtz and John Carlton, who you see there. It's a picture of me Scott, Joe Sugarman, Brian Kurtz, John Carlton, Stan Dahl, John Carlton's partner. We're in Vegas. Me and Scott were guest experts at Stan and John's Platinum Mastermind, as well as Brian Kurtz and Joe Sugarman, of course. Why wouldn't they be? And just appreciate you guys signing up, and get ready for the relaunch version 2 of Shortcut Copywriting Secrets by the late, great, my best friend, Scott Haynes. Talk to you soon. Thanks.